What would a JD Vance vice presidency mean for Ukraine? Why did 4 Russian drones fly over Belarus? And how has the weather exacerbated the effects of Russian attacks in Ukraine? This is week 125 of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. I'm Anna Belokur, reporting to you from Kyiv, and I'll be taking you through the top 3 stories from Ukraine this week. Last weekend, the entire world was shocked by the assassination attempt on former American president and Republican nominee Donald Trump. However, this was soon followed by another dramatic headline. Trump is still in the race and has officially appointed his running mate, Ohio Senator JD Vance. In the last few years, JD Vance has emerged as one of Washington's most outspoken opponents of aid to Ukraine. 5 days before the full-scale invasion, Vance told Steve Bannon, a former Trump advisor who is now in jail, that he doesn't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another. The video of this interview has since been removed from YouTube. And what about after the invasion? Well, Vance hasn't been ambivalent in the slightest. He's fought tooth and nail to block any amount of U.S. aid to Ukraine, making the false claim that there's no way of knowing where the money goes. He believes that Ukraine should cede territory to Russia, and has also claimed that the U.S. should cease imposing sanctions on Russia, lest they be driven into the arms of the Chinese communists. But let's go back to the beginning. Who is JD Vance? He's a senator from Ohio, a military veteran, a Yale Law School graduate, and a former venture capitalist who first rose to fame with the publication of his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. In the book, he describes how his life was shaped by his rural Appalachian upbringing, commenting on the ingrained poverty and indolence of the region and crediting himself with overcoming his background. However, there's one catch. JD Vance grew up in suburban Ohio, not in the Appalachian Mountains, and merely capitalized on stereotypes about the region for his own gain. Now, why do I care about this particular detail? Because unlike JD Vance, I actually did grow up in rural Appalachia, where my family and friends still live to this day. So even from Ukraine, I reserve the right to be personally angry at the damage that Vance's writing has done to public perception of Appalachian people. It's also notable that when he entered politics, Vance was a huge detractor of Donald Trump, calling him an idiot and America's Hitler, and saying he himself was a never-Trump guy. However, this stance changed over the course of Vance's political career, particularly in the wake of the 2020 presidential election, in which Vance supported Trump's claim that the election was rigged and illegitimate, which then led Trump to endorse Vance in the 2022 Ohio Senate race. Since Vance's appointment as Trump's running mate, concerns have grown over the future of America's domestic and international policy, particularly among those who support Ukraine. In a dramatic and fast-evolving campaign season, the stakes could not be higher. Some odd things have been going on in Belarus, Ukraine's northern neighbor, this week. On July 14th, dictator Alexander Lukashenko claimed that all Belarusian troops were being withdrawn from the Ukrainian border, with the exception of special forces units, just a few weeks after saying that he was reinforcing troops in the area due to security threats. Although no evidence for these threats could be verified, Lukashenko is now claiming that order has been restored and Belarusian troops are being returned to their permanent deployment positions. Belarus also recently hosted joint training exercises with Chinese soldiers following their accession to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a Eurasian political, economic, and defense organization led by China and Russia. The exercises, which were said to be held in the name of anti-terrorism training, lasted for 2 weeks and concluded on Friday. And a third piece of news out of Belarus this week. A total of 4 Russian kamikaze drones veered off course and entered Belarusian airspace in several separate incidents, with some traveling hundreds of miles over the country before entering Ukrainian airspace, being shot down, or falling off the radar with their final whereabouts unknown. There isn't a clear through line of these events, and it's not clear how Lukashenko currently sees Belarus in the context of Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine, in which he has thus far played the role of tacit enabler. He has claimed that Belarusian troops won't engage in combat, but also says that the West is provoking Belarus into military action. He's one of Putin's closest allies in the world, but with incidents like the drones veering off course, it can't be denied that it's at the risk of his own national security. There's been a common theme in every conversation in Ukraine this week. It's hot out, and the lack of electricity is not helping. The temperature here in Kyiv has been over 32 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit almost every day, with blackouts making it impossible to turn on air conditioning, keep food cold in the fridge, or do laundry. We're all feeling the effects. I've spoken before about these rolling electricity blackouts that were introduced as a way to mitigate the damage done by Russian strikes on Ukraine's power grid, and it's important to reiterate that this kind of warfare has a hugely negative effect on the civilian population. Not only are we all sweatier and less efficient than we would be if we had electricity all the time, the blackouts in combination with the extreme heat pose huge danger to vulnerable populations like the elderly and people with disabilities that rely on air conditioning, elevators, and electronic devices to physically survive. This is not the most graphic or dramatic form of warfare, but it is deeply insidious. It harms Ukrainians at home, affecting their morale and creating a disparity between people who can afford greater comfort and those who simply have to wait out the heat. Here in the newsroom of the Kyiv Independent, we are extremely lucky that we have a backup generator that allows us to continue our work and to stay cool. For this, I'd like to give a special thank you to our supporters. That's all for this week. We'll be back next Sunday with more news from Ukraine. Your support is what makes our work possible, and like I said before, it's what keeps us cool. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to this channel. If you'd like to become a member of the Kyiv Independent community, please visit the link in the description below. I'll see you next week.